what scientists and longevity researchers have looked at is how can we capture the benefits of exercise without putting the burden of and the oxidative stress on the body. And so this is where if you just always exercised, it would not be good. What this pathway does is it shifts your body from using just glucose to fatty acid oxygenation. So when you're using fatty acids as an energy source, now you're burning fuel from ketones and from fatty acids, which is a much longer lasting fuel source. And I don't know about you, but I'm more than happy to shed off the fat and use it as energy, especially when I'm exercising. These are clients in their 70s, and they've noticed that they just have better energy. They don't get that afternoon slump on the SLU. I think this could be one of the very phenomenal future treatment for age reversal. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Ageless Future, creating your ageless future in our Health Accelerator community. And what we're going to be talking about is SLU-PP-332, just a phenomenal molecule. It's not technically a peptide, however, it does fall into the peptide family based on the fact that we're looking at some of the most interesting molecules on the planet that help accelerate health. Researchers out of St. Louis University, they were looking for pathways that mimicked the effects of exercise. Because if you think about what is probably the most beneficial activity, beneficial thing for the body, is literally nothing can outperform exercise. Now, as you age, you'll notice that you have to have the food that aligns with your exercise, otherwise you have diminishing returns. But man, there's just so many benefits. And so what scientists and longevity researchers have looked at is how can we capture the benefits of exercise without putting the burden of and the oxidative stress on the body. And so this is where if you just always exercised, it would not be good. So it's dose dependent. And so as these researchers were looking for the molecule that could actually mimic exercise, they were looking at this estrogen pathways, and they found that there's an estrogen-like pathway, and when that pathway is activated, and there's a genetic response when you turn on that gene, then you create this whole metabolic cycle that mimics exercise. And so we're going to talk about this today and how it relates. So this is an estrogen-related pathway, or an ERR-alpha pathway, and it was, like I mentioned, discovered out of St. Louis University. But what they found in some of the mice, they found that they could run 70% longer, 70% farther. They could run 70% farther, and they could run 40% longer as far as distances go. So these, in this study, there's two different caveats there, where they found that this effect in the rodents, they said, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on humans, but they said this is powerful because what they're finding is it shows that there's a mitochondrial activation and fat metabolism that happens when you work on this ERR-alpha pathway. So what this pathway does is it shifts your body from using just glucose to fatty acid oxygenation, and so oxidation. And so when you're using fatty acids as an energy source, now you're burning fuel from ketones and from fatty acids, which is a much longer lasting fuel source. And I don't know about you, but I'm more than happy to shed off the fat and use it as energy, especially when I'm exercising. What a better time to use it. They also found that this gene, when you activate the ERR pathway, it upregulates genes such as PGC1 alpha and PDK4 and CPT1, which enhance mitochondrial biogenesis and performance. So you're getting this new activation of brand new mitochondria that are coming in and completely changing the metabolic profile. So Here's what they found in the mice. They found that there was a reduction of fat mass by 20% and a lowering of fasting glucose by 30%. It improved insulin sensitivity by 50%, without changing their appetite or changing their lean mass. So it created an energetic environment, because think of insulin when you've got insulin resistance, which is the opposite of insulin sensitivity. What you're going to see is a complete breakdown in the metabolic profile. It enhanced energy expenditure and muscle oxidative capacity, similar to aerobic exercise. So once again, it's like a SLU-PP. Yes, there is a lot of work that needs to be done on human models, but there's been enough people in our community and in the medical groups that I work with, where we have some very compelling data that shows it does translate over. Here's the caveat. In these studies in the mice model, they're using about 1,000 times the dose of what we're using clinically. I've used SLU-PP-332. I used it in 2023 when it first came out. I was able to get my hands on some, and just found an enormous benefit in mountain biking, and specifically in the climbing and my endurance. And then I've been on a cycle of it, a 60-day cycle earlier this year, and then I just started another 60-day cycle. And I do notice an immense improvement in all things from sleep to endurance. My VO2 max has increased, and yes, I do a lot of things, but there's definitely some benefits to this one. We've heard it from several of our clients, especially clients who do struggle with insulin resistance. And these are clients in their 70s, and they've noticed that they just have better energy. They don't get that afternoon slump on the slope. So I think it's pretty interesting, because yes, we do a very microdose, which we do in peptides and everything, because all we want to do is turn on genes and get your body expressing these pathways. And so one of the things that SLU-PP is, they call it an exercise mimetic, but what it does is it mimics endurance training, because it activates the mitochondrial biogenesis. There's another pathway, it's called the PARP2 delta pathway. And this pathway is expressed very nicely with SLU-PP-332. And that pathway actually increases your nitric oxide, also helps your body recover and repair, which is one reason why people are so excited about this molecule. It's made a lot of news, a lot of splash in the news. The other thing they found is, like I mentioned before, mice ran 70% farther on treadmill tests. I was reading another study, and they said they could run 70% farther, but it was 40% longer distances. So, and that was cumulatively, I believe. So I apologize for those of you who got confused by that. I need to look at the study a little deeper. I was listening to it, actually. But the other thing SLU-PP-332 does is it upregulates AMPK. And so the AMP kinase pathway, that's the secondary energy pathway. And when you activate the AMPK, what you'll get is a secondary energy source, and it helps protect your cells. So it helps clear out and promote autophagy, clear out the underperforming cells with AMPK. AMPK is it's kind of like the brakes for mTOR. So when you can activate AMPK, and you turn off mTOR, then you start mitigating your risk of cancer and inflammatory like diseases. And then the PGC1 alpha, that's a pathway that activates, once again, the mitochondrial pathways, but it also makes your body very efficient at utilizing energy. So GLUT4 is a transporter inside of the cell that brings glucose into the center of the cell without the presence of insulin. And so you get more activation of that with it as well. Some of the cardiovascular and cardioprotective effects of the SLU-PP-332 is it does enhance fatty acid metabolism in cardiac tissue. It improves contractility and recovery in post-infarction, reduces fibrosis and apoptosis while improving mitochondrial health. And then, it's something that we're, in the future, it could be a potential for treating heart failure and metabolic cardiomyopathy. So you think of people who have had either a vaccine injury from COVID, or you think of somebody who has had some kind of congestive heart failure. SLU-PP can be one of those things. There's obviously many things that we're looking at with this molecule, but that could be a definite potential. Some of the things they found on the anti-inflammatory, and this is partially one of the reasons why that AMP kinase pathway is important, because this molecule, it's anti-inflammatory. It's got the ability to downregulate the cytokines IL-6, tumor necrosis factor alpha. It also enhances autophagy, which is what I just mentioned, the clearance of the old cells, mitophagy, aiding in cellular renewal and organ protection, and then might even help with sarcopenia, because when you activate that estrogen like receptor pathway, what you're doing is you're actually promoting muscle building, and you're increasing the insulin sensitivity. And insulin is it's a hormone that it's very anabolic. It helps your body grow and your muscles grow. So, and then when you're activating that GLUT4, the glucose, you want glucose into the muscle, into the tissue. You do not want glucose circulating in the blood. And so you're creating this metabolic resistance. So, I think this could be one of the, very phenomenal future treatment for age reversal. It boosts mitochondrial density, respiratory chain efficiency. So this is where the athletes are loving it, because your cardiovascular endurance just feels amazing. And for those of you who are looking for a good cardiovascular test, one thing that I've gotten into is the upright rowing. Love the upright row, the ski erg. And the thing I like about it is it doesn't put pressure on your joints. I get a really good cardiovascular response, it's kind of fun to do. I put mine outside and I can just go for it, and doesn't require any kind of effort to get it set up or to get started and keep going on it. So my goal is 10,000 meters once a week, and then my fastest time yet is 37 minutes and 44 seconds. So been fun to get that goal. Safety profile. So, once again, this is something that is, we're documenting it, but no observed toxicity, appetite suppression, no lethal dose was established in the rodent models. Liver and renal markers, they remain stable. Sometimes if you're building muscle, we would expect there to be a little more burden on the kidneys, a little bit more burden on the liver. But none of that showed up in the animal models. And so once again, it's like this is interesting. There's no evidence of oxidative stress or hormonal imbalance. In fact, we see maybe a lowering of overall cholesterol because it's being utilized as an energy source. So it's a really phenomenal molecule. So what could you stack potentially? What could you stack this for? Well, I stack this with, I think, if you're using like a GLP-1 like tirzepatide or retatrutide, I could see this being incredibly helpful, because what you're doing is you are working on the GLP-1 pathway, but you do want to hold on and preserve muscle. You also you want to be turning on the AMPK pathway, so that as you're losing weight, your body has a lot of toxicity in it, and so that AMP kinase pathway that will help clean up the cells and promote autophagy. You'll see what we're seeing right now is it's investigated for metabolic syndrome, diabetes and obesity, age-related muscle loss and inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction post-COVID-19. Seeing a lot of people in the community where there's no other options, and they're finding that with SLU-PP and a few other treatments that can work really well for some of the mitochondrial hits that we all took from COVID. So could be something that I find instead of being an alternative for a sedentary lifestyle. I actually find that it's more people get more motivated to work out. Like some of my clients that I mentioned earlier, they said, you know what, it's actually fun working out because I'm seeing progress. And so if you add like a methylene blue, like use the NeuroPro as one of the methylene blues that we use here, but you can add methylene blue with this. So you pull the electrons into the mitochondria, activating that mitochondrial engine. You can use this with like MOTS-c, which is a myostatin inhibitor. It also is another mitochondrial encoded peptide. MOTS-c is just amazing because it also is an exercise mimetic, but it's working on a completely different pathway. You could use it with 5-amino-1-MQ. And what you'll find with 5-amino-1-MQ is there will be more NAD. Your body will hold on to its own NAD, and you'll produce the equivalent of about 140 to 160% more NAD naturally because it works on that NAD salvage pathway by inhibiting the NNMT pathway, or the nicotinamide and methyltransferase pathway. So you could add 5-amino-1-MQ, and then always when it comes to the peptides and regeneration, looking at the recovery. So that's where like BPC 157, thymosin beta 4, these are all really critical molecules that help turn on stem cells. They promote angiogenesis. They're anti-inflammatory. They're very protective for the heart and the kidneys and the brain. So I think there's a big future with SLU-PP-332. And I think, the future is in metabolic medicine. One of the things we're looking at is what are the most effective treatments that won't compromise your future health, and what can we do to utilize these so that your body's getting healthier every single year? So that's the goal, and the foundation of it all is the metabolic health. You'll notice that when we run your blood labs, the first four markers that we look at is your glucose, your hemoglobin A1C, your fasting insulin, and then C-peptide. And then we're looking at your LDH, lactose dehydrogenase. We're looking at all the inflammatory markers, liver and kidney profiles, hormones. But if the body has insulin resistance, and a great book, Why We Get Sick, Benjamin Bickman, another great one on insulin resistance, Circadian Code by Sachin Panda. But we're finding that if we can fix that metabolic cycle first, that's how you can start getting younger. And but it's the hardest one because many people in their 60s, 70s, when we get up there, it's so hard to keep the blood sugar stable. And this is where alcohol becomes almost a non-negotiable. It's just like your body does not do nearly as well with it. And even exercising, if you read the book Younger Next Year, it's like the older we get, the more we have to exercise, because exercise is such a key component of keeping our metabolic system tuned up. So yeah, you want to ask yourself, well, what do I need to be doing to be as healthy as I can metabolically? And that's where we're, Ageless Future, we're uncovering so many things like SLU-PP-332, the microbiota. Your gut biome has massive impact on the way you metabolize foods. And so we're also finding that the nutrition, leaning heavier on really good, great sources of protein, clean sources, that can be a huge benefit too. And then don't forget, when you're eating, you want to have the right enzymes and hydrochloric acid in your gut. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard to break down those proteins. So just making sure you're eating in the right cadence, you're digesting the food that you're eating. That improves your nutrient signaling. It improves what's called protein synthesis, your body's ability to denature these proteins and utilize them in the body as a source of building blocks. But Women, ideally, eating your protein earlier in the day. Fasting, you have less of a fasting window than men generally, and it does depend on your cycle. It depends on what your metabolic health is like currently. But men, I mean, we should be able to fast easy 12-hour windows, 14, 16 hours, even better. And in some of the research that was published in Circadian Code, they found that most people, most men especially, the longer that fasting window is, it does improve endurance. So, or you can take sloop, well, if you like eating. So I think this is, one of the big things I'm excited about when it comes to medicine is looking at these new innovations and saying, okay, let me apply it to myself, which I did a couple years ago. Um, Noticed enormous benefits, quantifiable data to back it up, and then how can we utilize it in the most safe, effective way? Gave it about a year and a half, and then we are able to start. We had our pharmacy can compound it now, and so now we're seeing really great benefits of it. So that's SLU-PP-332, and I want to hear what your thoughts are. How many of you have big fitness goals that you're working on right now, or things that you're really looking to streamline when it comes to your health? Because I think when it comes to utilizing some of these powerful molecules like SLUP or any of these mitochondrial peptides, it's really nice to have benchmarks. And so I'll give you guys the challenge today, because that's kind of our call to action on each one of these meetings is do something this week that gives you a benchmark for where you're at from an endurance and cardiovascular perspective. And then now that you have the benchmark, let's see if you can improve that. So maybe it's a skier. Maybe you'll go get on a rowing machine. Maybe it's something like cycling or running. I know snow's about to fall here in Utah, and so it's like I want to get my legs ready for snowboarding and skiing. It's that will be fun because you're in such a static position, as you're skiing and snowboarding, that it does require a lot of quad and hamstring strength. So working on those muscles, these are really fun things. And just in closing, one of the things that my son's been doing is we've been doing these races. Did a ultra run a couple weeks ago, Gasping through the Aspen. That was so fun, gorgeous race by Timpanogos. And then last weekend, for those of you, I know several of you on tonight live in Utah, but my son signed up for the DC 50 Peaks. It's a 50-mile trail race. And then I told him I'd meet him at mile 30, and then I'd run the last 20 miles with him. And we thought the race was going to get called off. We had one of the worst rainstorms in Utah history. And actually, it was more rain that had dropped in a day than we'd seen in 100 years. I mean, it literally was like, couldn't ask for a wetter day, but they kept the race going, and it was snowing in the higher elevation, so they kept the race at the lower elevation. And by the time I got to him, he called me at one of the aid stations, and he's like, "Oh, I'm really cold." I'm like, "You better get some new gloves," because his hands were soaked, and it was hard for him to drink his water. But yeah, unfortunately, I had to call the race. I'm like, "You cannot go back out, dude. There's no way. You're soaked." He couldn't stop shivering, couldn't get warm, and he was super dehydrated. It was really scary. And actually, there's a few people who ended up in the ER from hypothermia. So, but Dom was using, I've had him on Sloop. He loves it. It's made such a difference in his endurance, but it's given him a new outlook on life. It's giving him some bigger thing to focus on. And it's really cool to see him just hone that skill. And it's got me back into running longer distances. My goal this year is to sprint a 40-yard dash in the same time I could do it in high school, which is a 4:49. So a really fast 40-yard dash. I'm still got a ways to go, but these longer distances actually are kind of helping. So anyway, that's what's going on in my life. I hope you guys are doing great. Really appreciate you being part of the community And as always, if there's anything you need, join us on Wednesdays, ask any questions you have, and then make sure you reach out. And if you guys have not been to the new YouTube, I've been working so hard to try to create great content for you guys there. So just go to Regan Archibald, and if you guys would like to come to our next retreat, love to have you guys out. Appreciate you. Love you. We'll see you next time.